Trapped by a blizzard, the new teacher accepted a giant cowboy's bold offer. The snow began falling before Emily Carter realized she was afraid, drifting softly at first like feathers shaken loose from the sky, disguising its danger beneath a fragile beauty that made her pause at the schoolhouse window longer than she should have. She had come to this remote Wyoming valley with the quiet confidence of someone who believed change alone could save her, trading city noise for open land, heartbreak for purpose, and the familiar for something honest. The children had left early that afternoon, bundled in laughter and wool scarves, their footsteps quickly swallowed by the growing hush. Emily remained behind, grading papers, lost in the comfort of routine, until the light dimmed unnaturally and the wind began to speak in low, warning tones. By the time she stepped outside and locked the door, the world had transformed. The road she had traveled daily was fading beneath white sheets, fences dissolving into nothing, and the sky pressing down as though it intended to bury everything beneath it. She pulled her coat tighter, boots crunching uncertainly as the wind strengthened, pushing against her with invisible hands that stole warmth and breath. Emily had lived through winter storms before, but this was different. This was wild, unrestrained, as if the land itself had decided to remind her she was a guest, not a master. The bus would not come now. She understood that instinctively. Even if it tried, it would never reach her in this rising fury. She started walking anyway, stubbornness urging her forward, fear whispering at the edges of her thoughts. Each step grew heavier, snow climbing her calves, then her knees, the wind howling loud enough to drown out her own breathing. When she stumbled, the cold rushed in immediately, seeping through wool and skin, biting deep enough to make her gasp. It was then she heard it, low, rhythmic, powerful. Hooves. At first she thought it was her imagination, the storm playing tricks on a mind already fraying. But the sound grew closer, steadier, cutting through the chaos with undeniable force. She turned, squinting against the wind, heart hammering until a massive shape emerged from the white. Horse and rider materialized like something out of legend, dark against the storm, unshaken by the wind that threatened to knock her flat. The man sat tall in the saddle, broad shoulders wrapped in a heavy coat dusted with snow. Head pulled low, face stern and unreadable. He guided the horse with calm authority, bringing it to a halt before her as if the blizzard were nothing more than an inconvenience. "Miss Carter," he called out, his voice deep and solid, grounding in a way that startled her. He knew her. Everyone did, she supposed. The new teacher always became local knowledge quickly in places this small. She opened her mouth to respond, but the wind stole her words, replaced them with a sharp gust that sent her staggering. Sideways, she didn't hit the ground. Strong arms caught her easily, lifting her as though she weighed nothing at all. For a moment, panic flared, being held by a stranger in the middle of a storm, but it faded just as quickly, smothered by the warmth radiating from him and the calm certainty in his grip. "You won't make it to town," he said, leaning close so she could hear him. His breath fogged the air, eyes steady, assessing. "The roads are gone. Come with me. My ranch is closer." The offer was bold, sudden, and entirely without softness. Yet there was no threat in it, only fact. Emily hesitated, her instincts battling fear and reason. But the blizzard made the decision for her. Another violent gust struck, and she felt the strength drain from her legs. The man swore under his breath, decisive, lifting her fully now and settling her against his chest before swinging her onto the saddle in front of him. She barely had time to protest before he mounted behind her, one arm firm around her waist, the other guiding the horse forward. They moved through the storm like a single being, horse steady, rider unyielding, Emily clinging to the last remaining heat she could feel. She became acutely aware of his size then, the width of his chest, the length of his arms, the immovable solidity of him as the wind battered them. He shielded her instinctively, angling his body so the worst of the storm struck him first. She didn't know how long they traveled. Time blurred into cold and motion and the sound of his breathing, slow and controlled, never betraying fear. When lights finally appeared through the snow, Emily nearly cried with relief. The ranch stood sturdy against the storm, windows glowing warm gold, a sanctuary carved from wood and determination. He dismounted quickly, lifting her down again with the same effortless strength, carrying her inside before she could even protest. The door shut behind them with a heavy thud, sealing out the storm, and the sudden quiet felt almost unreal. Heat wrapped around her instantly, the scent of wood smoke and coffee filling her lungs, making her knees weak in a different way. He set her gently on a chair near the fire, kneeling to remove her snow-soaked boots without a word. His hands were large, scarred, careful. "Name's Jack Holloway," he said finally, standing and shrugging off his coat. "You're safe here." Emily looked up at him, truly seeing him now in the firelight, tall beyond normal measure, weathered face, eyes carrying a loneliness that matched the land outside. Safe, the word echoed in her chest, heavy with meaning. Outside, the blizzard raged on, sealing her fate for the night, perhaps longer. Inside, she realized with a quiet, trembling certainty that her life had just taken a turn she never could have planned. And somewhere deep inside, beneath fear and exhaustion, a fragile curiosity began to grow, trapped by a blizzard. The new teacher accepted a giant cowboy's bold offer. Morning did not arrive the way Emily expected it to, with birdsong or sunlight or the reassuring sense that the world had returned to normal. Instead, it came slowly, quietly, wrapped in a pale grey stillness that pressed against the ranch, windows like a held breath. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was warmth, real, steady warmth that soaked into her bones and made her momentarily forget the terror of the night before. The second thing was silence, not the empty silence of loneliness, but the deep, layered quiet of a land smothered under snow so thick it swallowed sound itself. She lay still for a moment, wrapped in heavy blankets that smelled faintly of cedar and clean wool, listening to the soft crackle of a fire somewhere nearby and the distant, muffled groan of wind outside the walls. She sat up slowly, memories rushing back in uneven fragments, the blizzard, the schoolhouse, the horse emerging from the storm like a myth given flesh, the giant cowboy's arms lifting her without effort or hesitation. Jack Holloway. The name surfaced clearly now, anchored to the image of a man built like the land itself, rough and unyielding yet unexpectedly careful. Emily swung her legs over the side of the bed, toes brushing the cold wooden floor, and took in the room around her. It was simple and clean, nothing unnecessary, every object purposeful. A small dresser, a chair, a single window layered with frost so thick it looked etched in white glass. This was a room meant for rest, not indulgence, and somehow that made her feel more at ease. She dressed quickly in the clothes Jack had set out for her, plain, warm garments that fit better than she expected, and stepped into the main room. The ranch house was larger than it had seemed the night before, its open layout framed by thick beams and stonework that spoke of decades of endurance. Jack stood at the stove, his back to her, shoulders wide beneath a worn flannel shirt, moving with quiet efficiency as he poured coffee into a mug. He turned as if he sensed her presence, dark eyes flicking toward her, expression unreadable but calm. "Morning," he said simply. "Morning," she replied, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. She hesitated, then added, "Thank you for everything." He nodded once, as though gratitude were unnecessary, as though helping someone survive a storm were no more remarkable than mending a fence. "Storm's not done," he said, gesturing toward the window. "Snow's too deep to move through yet. You'll be here a while." Emily absorbed that quietly. The knowledge should have frightened her, but it didn't, not entirely. There was something grounding about the certainty in his voice, about the way he didn't dramatize the danger or pretend it didn't exist. He offered her a mug of coffee, his hand briefly brushing hers as she took it, the contact sending a strange, unexpected awareness through her chest. They sat at the rough wooden table, the fire casting long shadows across the walls, and while neither spoke, the silence between them felt natural, unforced, as though words would come when they were ready. Outside, the storm continued its slow assault, sealing them inside this shared space, this fragile pause carved out of chaos. Emily studied him as he drank his coffee, his hands marked by old scars and calluses. The faint crease between his brows that suggested a life spent making hard decisions. He wasn't handsome in a polished way, but there was a gravity to him, a presence that drew the eye and held it. "You live out here alone?" she asked finally. Jack set his mug down, considering the question. "Most of the time." "Doesn't it get lonely?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, as if weighing how much truth to offer. "Sometimes," he said. "But the land doesn't lie to you. People do." The honesty of it struck her harder than she expected. She thought of the life she'd left behind, the crowded halls, the broken promises, the sense of being unseen even in a room full of people. Out here, with a man who spoke so plainly, she felt oddly visible. As the hours passed, they settled into a rhythm shaped by necessity and mutual respect. Jack showed her how to keep the fire steady, how to layer blankets against the cold that crept in through the walls despite their thickness. Emily helped where she could, grateful for something to do, for a role beyond being rescued. They shared meals that were simple but hearty, the kind meant to sustain rather than impress, and with each passing hour, the tension she hadn't realized she carried began to loosen. When night came again, the storm still unbroken, Jack stood near the window, arms crossed, his silhouette framed by the firelight. "You can take the bedroom," he said. "I'll sleep out here." Emily shook her head. "There's no need for that. I don't want to inconvenience you." He turned to her, expression firm but not unkind. "You won't." Something in his tone told her this was not a negotiation. She nodded, understanding that his boldness was not about dominance, but about responsibility. As she lay down that night, listening to the wind claw at the walls, she felt a strange mix of vulnerability and safety. Trapped by the blizzard, yes, but also sheltered by a man who asked for nothing and offered more than words could explain. And as sleep finally claimed her, Emily couldn't help but wonder what would happen when the storm finally ended and whether she would want to leave at all.